Hey ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys are doing amazing. I have a little friend here, Luna, which I looked up this name and supposedly it means moon. Anyway, so I don't know why I named her Moon. I just kind of really liked that name, so ow. Hey. Anyway, so anyways, guys, I hope you guys are doing amazing, right? So this video is going to be relatively short. I think I didn't really want to make a long video today, right? And I just wanted to talk to you about spiritual ego, okay? So first of all, right, when I heard this term, I don't really know what it means, right? But supposedly it's like a person that's spiritual who gets a big ego, right? Basically. Um, and I've seen this happen to spiritual people, I suppose, right? And that's kind of a contradiction, though, spiritual ego, right? And I just thought about it. And why is it a contradiction, right? So I'm going to explain it to you in this video, right? So basically, the reason why it's a contradiction, right, is because a person that is spiritual, right, or a person that has spiritually awakened, right, to themselves, to who they are, right, they spiritual, right, awakening, right, that means you're awakening to the fact that you have a spirit, right, or the Holy Spirit, right, that's within you, right. And so that's the spiritual awakening, right? And so with that comes the death of your ego, basically, right? So the death of your ego is basically, a person that has undergone a spiritual awakening has to go through like different stages, right? I'm not gonna really go into those stages here, right? But part of that stage, right, and I will just discuss this one stage, is the death of your ego, right, or the dark night of the soul, right? That's when you realize that everything that you've been taught, everything that you think you are, is actually not what you are, right? And so you kind of like your ego, right, it shatters, okay, and you basically you're forced to go within and then kind of destroy or step away from your old, from the illusions, basically, right, into the truth, right. And so you're forced to rebuild a new life, right, that actually comes from your heart, right, instead of your ego, right. And so there's a huge difference between a person that is not yet aware of who they are, right, who is operating in their ego, versus a person who has awakened to their true self, right, and who is now awake and aware, and they're operating from their heart, right, like as a light being, right. They have stepped into their power, which is absolutely, it's a power, right, because you now recognize that you're no longer alone, right. You have the Holy Spirit that's guiding you, right, to make all of those right choices, right. And you have actually given into you drop the ego, and you're given into to love, right. You're given into being guided, right. You're not trying to control situations anymore, right. You have sort of like released your control and your fear, right. And so you now kind of allow your body, which is your just vessel, right, to be guided by the Holy Spirit that's within you, basically, right. And so and in turn, right, once again, this makes you into a very powerful weapon, basically, right, sort of like a weapon, I would say. I don't know if I like this term weapon, really, right, because it's also a contradiction, right. Because love isn't a weapon. It's not about fighting, right? It's not about controlling, dominating anyone, right? It's not about killing anyone. It's really about winning others, or guiding them towards their true selves, right? With love and with kindness and with compassion, right? And so you basically, by being in this state, right, you become a threat to the devil's kingdom. You become a threat to this world, because this world is built on illusions, right? It's the matrix. It's basically it's the devil's playground, right? And so people like this, right, people that have had the spiritual awakening, people who finally recognize their worth, they recognize their value, people who stepped into that godly power, right? People who willingly, sorry about the flies, people who willingly, oh my goodness, people who willingly are now allowing to be used by God in order to be the guiding light, to be the source, right? The godly source, basically. So God operates within those vehicles, right? Or vessels, okay? So, and from that, right, he can really show others how powerful he is, right? It's through vessels that have awakened, basically, right? Anyway, so the spiritual awakening, right, and the ego, right? So let's go back to the ego. I kind of got out of tangent here, right? But if we go back to the spiritual ego, can you have a spiritual ego? I don't think that you actually can. I don't think you can have a spiritual ego, right? And the reason being is because a spiritual ego, once again, is a contradiction, right? Because once you're aware of your humanity, basically, once you're aware of your the fact that you're a spiritual being having this human experience, right? Your ego drops, right? I don't like the term the death of your ego, right? Because that's what you undergo during the spiritual awakening, right? I don't like this term because your ego doesn't truly go away, right? The thing is, it simply becomes dormant, okay? It becomes dormant, and you become very aware of when you're operating in your ego, from your ego, right? So you become aware of it, and then you can kind of you can change that up, right? And you can switch up, you can choose very easily in which state to operate in, right? So when you recognize, like, for example, you're speaking to someone, right, and maybe they're in their ego, right, which can happen, of course, right, and you recognize this too in another person, right, you can easily tell when somebody's in their ego. So in turn, you can kind of see through them, okay? You can see through that illusion because you were able to see. It's kind of like if you love yourself, you can now love other people too, right? If you don't love yourself, you can love other people, right? So it's the same idea here. If you were able to recognize that illusion within you, right, and break it, you can kind of do the same with others, right? With other people. You can recognize when they're in their ego, and you can see beyond the facade, right, that they're putting on. And so it's actually extremely difficult to trick or to pass one over on a person that has awakened to who they are, because like I said, they can see beyond any facade, right? They can see through you, they can feel, they can pick a lot of things up intuitively about you, right? So really, that's why I think a lot of people feel extremely exposed in a person's like that presence, okay? They can become really angry, they can begin to feel really exposed, they can you will trigger a lot of people just by being yourself, okay? You will trigger people, you will a lot of people might become very obsessed with you, right? A lot of people might just want to be around you in your energy, right? So a lot of people will try to invade your space. Some people will just, it's kind of like seeing the sun also. Some people will just kind of want to just kind of like get away, especially if it's people that that are in a lot of darkness. They're operating in the darkness, right? They're very still very much very far away from their true self, basically, right? So those are the people that will also be very triggered. They might even get angry at you for no reason. They will start attacking you even, you know, which is kind of crazy, right? And you kind of like, you did nothing wrong, right? But it's once again, it's the spirit in them that's really attacking you, right? And that's extremely triggered and threatened by you and by the godly presence that's in you, okay? And that's why there's a spiritual battle going on, right? It's the battle between, not necessarily a physical battle, right? Although that can happen too, right? And the other person, maybe the one that will attack you physically, will not even know why will not even like kind of be entirely aware of why they don't like you, right? Or they want to like attack you or hurt you. Once again, it's the spirit in them, and they're not aware of it, right? Anyways, so the biggest difference between a lot of people and the spiritually awakened person, right, is that the spiritually awakened person is you know, they're very much aware of who they are. They're aware that they're not on their own anymore, right? They know that even if they don't, for example, maybe don't have any friends, right? Like physical friends, that they're not alone in this world, right? They have their spiritual team backing them up, right? They have guidance, right? They can see things from a greater perspective, right? They're guided by numerology, right? So they can see signs and synchronicities all over, right? And they can intuitively understand or pick up messages from those signs, okay? So spiritual ego is a contradiction, and it's technically impossible. The reason being, right, with a spiritually awakened person, the reason being, once again, is because, right, they are now aware of when they're operating in their ego, right? And of course, it is always going to be there, okay? It's not going to go away completely, right? But it will become more or less dormant, right? You can choose how you are now, what kind of relationships you have with people, right? Or what kind of interactions rather, right? So of course you can still be coming from your ego, right? But once again, those interactions will no longer feel right? And you will notice them right away, because other people will kind of become defensive, right? And they're going to they're going to get into their own ego, right, for the most part. And so it will be like an interaction between two egos, right? No real connection. It's not going to feel fulfilling, right? It feels like a waste of time. It feels like it's just not fulfilling, right? So I personally tend to stay away from interactions like this, right? And once again, if I do get into my ego, I'm able to switch it up or recognize when I was being in my ego, and I can easily switch it up, right? And go back to my heart space, basically, right? And once again, this also helps guide the other person towards their heart too, right? So when you're being vulnerable, the other person usually drops their defenses too. Not all the time, right? But for the most part. So spiritual ego is I would say, with a spiritually awakened individual, it's impossible, because it doesn't feel good, because it's a contradiction, because you're now aware of when you're operating from your ego, and you're very much aware when other people are operating from their egos, and you tend to either avoid those individuals, right? Or you tend to you try to lead them to, so you try to make them feel comfortable, so they drop their defenses with you, right? And so I think that's another reason why other people can become really obsessed with you too, okay? Because they feel good. You make them kind of feel seen, you make them feel understood, you make them feel heard, right? And so in turn, they become obsessed with that feeling that you bring forth in them, right? So that's, so yeah, I don't know, guys, I will make other videos about what your energy or what the spiritually awakened person can do, okay? What power they actually hold. And it's really incredible, actually. You become extremely powerful. You become basically like a spiritual celebrity, yeah? And so, just look at it this way. It's basically, I'm not saying that you're now God, but you're God's weapon, right? God can use you in many different ways that He deems fit, right? And so you become like you become a really strong force to be reckoned with, right? And that's extremely recognized. That is very much seen, right? And so celebrities will basically be staring at you now. And guys, this is also really funny. I will tell you an example of this, right? When I was in a very good state, right? I was just literally glowing, right? I remember being in the Oakland airport, right? And so I was just standing there, right? And suddenly I saw a celebrity, right? It was Ashton Kutcher, right? Ashton Kutcher, you probably know, Dude, Where's My Car, right? He made like a lot of different movies, right? And so he's like a pretty big celebrity, right? And anyway, so I saw him, right, and he was staring at me, and I was staring at him, and we were staring at one another, right, as he was walking by, and I was just looking at him, and I was kind of like reading his energy too, right? I have to disappoint you guys. I don't know, for those that like Ashton Kutcher, right? He's got a pretty bad energy. In fact, he was, I think, very depressed. I was able to read his energy, right? And like I said, he was very low vibrational, depressed even, and just was not happy, okay? So I was extremely disappointed. I was not too surprised because I've seen a lot of celebrities in the past, right? And I worked with them, right? And so yeah, I was a bit disappointed because I liked a lot of the things that he did, right? And he also looked completely different too, like physically. Physically, he was very small, very tiny. Nothing that he is being portrayed. He looked like nothing like he was being portrayed in like the magazines or in the movies, right? Uh, and once again, he didn't have good energy, you know. So someone spotted him, right, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, Ashton Kutcher," right? And they just kind of they ran after him, right? And he put his hoodie on. He was like, "Hey guys, not now, not now," you know. And he kind of just like ran away, you know. But anyways, this was the experience that I had, right? So he was staring at me. I looked at him too, but I couldn't really recognize him. You know, I didn't recognize him at first, but then I did, you know, and I was really disappointed because I don't know. You know, I thought that he would be completely different, basically, so, right? So once again, my illusion of what he was shattered too. Okay, and in person, it's often very different than seeing someone in person. It's often a very different experience than seeing someone, right, in the movies, right, or in magazines and so on, right? So yeah. Anyway, so a spiritual ego, right, back to that, is a contradiction, and with a truly spiritual person, a person that has had their spiritual awakening, it is I would say it's not possible, okay? Even if, for example, they get extremely big, they get a lot of recognition, right? Maybe physically, right? Maybe on social media, right? Maybe they become a huge YouTuber or something, right? I've seen this happen with one guy. He was down to earth, very down to earth initially, right? And then as he has gotten bigger, he became very egotistical, right? I would say. But so I started really questioning. I was like, was he really... was he as spiritual as he portrayed himself to be, or as he came off? Probably not. Yeah, there aren't too many people who have had the spiritual awakening, right? I think it's like 144 basically, right? 1044K, right? So yeah, I don't know. It's really and it's extremely rare, right? Anyways, that's not to say that most of you cannot have a spiritual awakening, because I think it is possible for many people, okay? And that's the whole point of a spiritual awakened person. It's to help others awaken to their humanity, okay, their spirituality, and to help others recognize that they're not alone, okay, even if they are physically alone. And it's to guide those, you know, to guide everyone else to the light, okay. And so we can all have the best experience here on earth right now, you know. Anyways, guys, I hope you really enjoyed this video. Much love to you, okay? And yeah, I will see you in other videos. Bye.